Welcome back to the Training Model Podcast. This is, I'm just going to call it episode 2, but it's like 20 something. Second episode of 2026. As I said, I'm going to endeavor to just do this weekly, even if it's just a 30-minute chat. I have decided that there will be value in the podcast, which would just be me discussing sort of conversations and things that I've had with people in my DMs or content I'm producing that seems to be hitting pretty well, which this week will be on breathing and some ideas around breathing exercises, some things to look out for, but also some of the utility of them and why I think they are valuable. So we'll dive into that. But the other thing I do like about podcasts, and I had one chat in the DMs with a guy who was like, man, I miss the Strength Culture podcast, and I miss it too. It was arguably my favorite thing that we ever really did at the gym in our entire tenure. It was so much fun and we had such a big impact with it. It was awesome. But the thing I do like about podcasts is they are, well, the ones I enjoy, they're kick back. They're just chat about whatever. And it's obviously a little bit different because I am here by myself. But I think I'm just going to use some time on these podcasts just to have a little recap of what's going on, some of the business stuff that's happening, a little bit of behind the scenes and some personal stuff as well, because I do think that stuff is important and it definitely helps. I enjoy, like, it helps me connect with other people when I'm listening to podcasts. So I know that it will do the same for other people out there. So I think the structure, unless I have a guest on, I think the structure is going to be a little bit of value, 15, 20 minutes, like a bite-sized chunk of just a topic or something that I'm thinking about in detail. And then another just 10 to 15 minutes of just a little bit of a catch-up. So obviously I'm back making content. I'm back producing content. I had a chat with Angus Bradley actually this morning. He's back from his New Zealand holiday. He's someone I would definitely get on the pod, but he's back from his New Zealand holiday, and we were just talking about e-commerce because now I am in the e-commerce land. And I had this saying when I was running businesses. I still am running businesses, but that profit is oxygen in a business. So when I say that, if you're a young coach or if you're a coach, you'll know this feeling that when money is actually starting to come in, it just takes this layer of stress off that feels like when you're training, it's oxygen coming in. It's taking a deep breath and actually getting some air into the system. And that oxygen just removes some fatigue. It clears the headspace. It allows you to make more informed decisions. It gives you time to think and do what you're trying to do and also execute at a higher level. And I've always used this sort of little motto that profit in a business is oxygen, because when the business actually starts profiting, it just takes this layer of stress off. And I've gone through patches where we're losing money. I've gone through patches where we're flying. I've gone through patches that are just stable. I much prefer stable businesses, so building recurring revenue and then leveraging off that, which will be a chat that will come after. But in the chat with Angus, I was like, I'm starting to see that just content is oxygen for the direction I'm heading, which is ultimately just producing more content and not being a little trigger happy, like pull the trigger a little quicker on certain things. Sometimes I feel like I need to produce at a high quality or a high level or really get all my points across. I love TikTok and I love creators that just pump out videos every day, like 10, 15 videos a day. And it is a strategy that I'm considering doing. I don't know if it will work on Instagram, but I might try it for a week and just dump thought after thought after thought, just face to camera style. But chatting with Angus, I digress a little bit. Chatting with Angus, I was discussing, or we were discussing, that I think my biggest fault over the years has been that I build momentum and then I just let it go because I just stop making content and I go quiet on socials. And as much as I can always blame personal situations for that, it's naive for me to think that I won't easily just fall back into that trap now that I don't have the gym and have to worry about that and the stress of that. And also I'm past some of those big stresses of my family situation as well. Like there will always be stresses, and my go-to sort of default to deal with those stresses is always avoidance, and sort of closing myself off to things. And it's very difficult to be forward on social media when you're not feeling the best internally. It's very hard to fake, and people can sniff that out. Like like a fucking truffle pig. They'll fucking sniff out that inauthenticity very, very quickly. In the same way you can tell when someone's being authentic until they scam the fuck out of you in a crypto thing. But it was, yeah. So I'm going into this year with the goal to just be consistent with content, and I think right now that means posting Monday to Friday at least once. You may have noticed, not that anybody would be closely looking at this shit the way that I look at, but I have dropped a couple of extra posts. But I do endeavor to be just significantly more active with my posting. I'm not scheduling anything. I'm just kind of seeing what the conversations I'm having with my clients, my strength training clients and rehab clients, but then also my mentorship students and the group calls. I'm sure there'll be plenty that pop up when we get into the movement mentorship that kicks off next month. But I think I'm just going to just try to document some of the conversations and some of the value that I'm providing for those people, and then putting that on socials. I think that's the easiest way for me to stay consistent with it. But yeah, Angus is back in the country. He's back from his break, and I'm keen. I love Angus. Every time I have a conversation with Angus, I just feel G'd up. Like it even if it's just a little 15-minute chat, we're talking about how to cook steak better or something. But I don't know, he's just got that energy that it really does help me push myself and engage in the process a little bit better. So shouts out to Angus. He is a champion. I do really appreciate having him in my corner. But as I said at the start, I do want to chat about breathing a little bit. I've put a couple of posts up this week about breathing, and some of the utility of it, and some of the things, some of the problems or the potholes that I've stumbled into with regards to breathing and the utility of breathing drills. So before we get into how to use it, I think it is important to understand what it actually is and why it helps seemingly like magic in so many situations. And unless you've gone through a couple of breathing drills and then retested a range of motion, like you see all these things, like the Alex Effers out there, the Connor Harris is out there, they'll do a table test, then they'll be like, oh, the pelvis is in this position, the foot is here, blah, 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 this is happening. They need to shift back into this position. We're going to execute this breathing drill in this posture and focus on expanding in this position and compressing over here in the rib cage. And they go through this stuff, and then they'll retest the range of motion, and you can pick up. And I've done this. I've got videos for this as well. I'm actually going to start ManyChat, and the first one I'm going to do is the breathing drill thing, because I'm on a little cycle here with breathing drills, and I think people are enjoying them. So, or at least enjoying my takes of them. So like, what is actually happening there? You test a range of motion on a table test. I hate table tests, but that's another conversation. But you test a range of motion at the hip or the shoulder. You then step into a breathing drill. More often than not, depending on the person, looks hyper specific. Like, it looks crazy. Like they're in the most fucking contorted position sometimes. You got one leg out here, you got a medial foot pressure right push, you got a left outside heel on the left pressure, you've got maybe a head turn, a chest turn, an arm reach, and all of these sort of things. You do some breathing there, and then you go back and retest, and all of a sudden you completely change range of motion in a very passive way. But it can feel and seem like magic until you start to learn the principles that underpin why this stuff works so well. And that's part of the thing I want to get into today, is like, what is actually going on with these breathing drills? The first thing that I don't think enough people sort of recognize is the central nervous system's input or influence over every joint, muscle, tissue of the body. And obviously with the central nervous system, you have two branches predominantly that are going to sort of govern the influence of the central nervous system. One of them is going to be our parasympathetic tone. So parasympathetic would be rest and digest. This is all a part of the nervous system, but it is a systemic input into many organs and tissues of the body to rest and digest, to calm down the system. On the flip side of that, you then have sympathetic tone, which is like an amping up. It's fight or flight. It elevates tension, it elevates tone, it awakens us, and it's all stemming from the central nervous system. And anytime we think and consider the central nervous system as something that can impact whatever it is we're looking at, it is always in a very broad, very it's like a shotgun response. So when I say a shotgun response, it's when you aim a shotgun at a target and you pull the trigger, pellets go everywhere. It shreds the fucking target. It's not this hyper specific response that we're looking for when we discuss nervous system input into the movement sort of capacity, the movement outcome of humans. It is a shotgun sort of impact on the system. It is broad sweeping. It affects everything. So quite often what you'll get when you do these breathing drills is you will actually start to upregulate parasympathetic tone. So that rest and digest sort of input into the entire system of the human, that will start to upregulate to the point where the client can start to feel calmer, especially when you're focusing on the exhale and getting central and reducing the amount of carbon dioxide into the system. We can get into some physiology around that as well. Maybe not today, but there are some interesting things just related to breathing when it comes to the central nervous system. There's a reason that most stress related strategies for centuries have been centered around the breath and exhaling. Take a breath, man. Hey, man, relax. Take a breath. Like all of that stuff stems from a truth, a principle of how the chemicals within our bloodstream are circulating and the levels of them and the impact that has on the nervous system. But when we're on the ground, we're exhaling, we're exhaled focused, we are calm. Quite often you're in a relaxing position. You've got your legs up on something. You're just in a very calm position, and then the coach is asking you to do very calm things, which is exhaling. Focus on your exhale. Hey, I just want you to calm down. Big long inhale, hold for a second. Big long exhale, hold for a second. That, if you just sat in your chair and did that, that would relax your nervous system. You would feel calmer. Sometimes it's important just to take a breath when you do feel stressed. Take a minute to yourself, sit down, get in the sun, calm down. All of that stuff is driving parasympathetic tone up when it comes to the nervous system. And simply by doing that process, just relaxing on the ground, breathing, and increasing parasympathetic tone, you will get a systemic reduction in tension in your system. All of your joints will increase range of motion to some degree. They might not change as effectively as some of these very particular positions that coaches and allied health people put you in, or if you've ever tried yourself. And we'll get into that for the next reason. But you will get systemic changes to range of motion to the point where you could test someone on the table, keep them on the table, and just have them relax, do 5 exhale focused breaths, and then retest, and you will increase your IR of your hip, your ER of your hip, your hip flexion, your shoulder IR, and all of that. You will get changes. They might not be as drastic as some of these ones that you might have seen online, but you definitely will get changes. And it all stems within parasympathetic tone. I believe that it's roughly 80% of the benefit of breathing drills fall within that central nervous system function. And when you think about it in that way, all of a sudden it opens up the opportunity for us to choose and select drills a bit freer, rather than thinking that there's one specific drill that is going to help one specific case. You can really just start to look at it from a systemic principle-based sort of decision making, which is, let's just see what happens if I calm this person down. Calm them down, retest. Check if it's provocative, whatever it needs to be in your case. But that would be part of it as to why these things work and why they work so quickly, but then also why they are so transient and all of a sudden they can kind of just fall away and the range of motion never really sticks. You might increase 10 degrees of hip IR, but it never really sticks for the person. The next day they come in, they've got to do the breathing drill again because it wasn't true range of motion improvement. It was a transient change of the central nervous system's control of the muscles and bones of that joint at that time. It is a motor control change. That's one part, and that's the biggest part. The second part comes to the principle of movement that is relative motion versus orientational motion. So we'll dive into that first. Relative motion is two things moving relative to themselves. So if I was to clap my hands, I can move both my hands relatively closer. That would cause a clap. But I could also keep my left hand still, stable, fixed, and just move my right hand. and create the clap. Or I could fix my right hand and just move my left hand. All three strategies, clapping both together, moving one into the other, or then moving the opposite into the other, all of them achieve the goal of clapping. They are just different ways, they are different movements or motions that create the outcome. That is a relative motion. They are moving in respect relative to each other and creating an outcome. When we think of this within a joint, let's use the hip internal rotation can happen by turning the femur towards midline, so IRing the femur, keeping the pelvis fixed. You could create hip internal rotation by turning the pelvis towards the femur, keeping the femur fixed, or you could create the motion by turning them into each other. And that would be turning the pelvis towards and then turning the femur in, or finding like a midline force and a medial foot pressure. All of that is relative hip IR. It's all hip internal rotation. And when we move the joint when we move the two bones of a joint relatively, we actually lengthen and change the length of the tissues that are under load. So when we create that hip IR, we actually lengthen the glute complex. We lengthen the glute max, which can be fantastic for trying to train the glute in a lengthened state. Creating hip internal rotation lengthens that tissue and moves it towards more of a lengthened tension that can help for a number of outcomes. If we think about the opposite to relative motion, which is then just orientational motion. So when we think of orientational motion, it would be those two bones moving in the same direction together. So this would look like turning the femur towards the pelvis, but the pelvis is also turning away from the femur. So even though the femur has technically moved towards midline, it has moved in the direction of internal rotation, it actually didn't create hip internal rotation. It created an orientational shift of the entire system. The whole system moved as one block. It moved as one unit. So relative motion changes the length and the tension of the surrounding muscles because the joint itself is moving. Orientational movement is the whole system moving in a direction to achieve the task. And it doesn't actually change the length and the tension of the muscles that we're looking to train. An example of orientational movement is butt wink. You come down in the squat, you run out of space, or you have shit motor control, but you come down in the squat, you run out of space, the pelvis dumps underneath you. Even though you got deeper in the squat, it wasn't achieved by deeper relative hip flexion. The femur and the pelvis didn't change position. What changed was the low back flexing and rolling the pelvis underneath you. That would be an example of orientational movement. The whole system just moved as a block rather than a well-executed squat where we achieve hip flexion, we achieve our depth, and then we come out of hip flexion. There is no butt wink in a relative motion. There might still be a little bit if you do run out of space. But that is how this stuff starts to sort of propagate into the training idea. And this is a principle of movement to understand. When we look at form breakdown and technique breakdown, are we looking at relative motion? So the joint is actually doing what we want, but it doesn't look how we want it to look? Or is it an orientational strategy that's coming from somewhere else in the body? Very easy to find the orientational stuff. You're going to look at huge positional changes of things like the rib cage, the pelvis, the foot. You're going to look at other areas of the body starting to move and contribute to the motion. It's very easy to spot orientational motion. And quite often, it's not a bad thing. It's just a strategy to achieve the task. But quite often, in the coaching world, we are trying to move clients away from orientational strategies. We're trying to move them towards more relative motion. If we can increase the relative motion, if we can increase the actual range that certain joints are moving through and tensioned and loaded through, that is where the benefits of strength training and what our job is ultimately. We quite often try to avoid the orientational stuff, or at least coach people out of it towards more relative stuff. That is the principle of movement, relative motion versus orientational motion. The layer that breathing has, so we chatted about the nervous system, but the second part to that is What breathing does is it creates the demand for relative motion to happen at the axial skeleton. So at the rib cage and at the spine and at the pelvis, which is really the sacrum, but let's call it the pelvis as well. That section of the body, the trunk, the core, whatever you want to call it, it's the axial skeleton is the technical term. When we engage in these breathing drills and set up in a flexed position, allowing the diaphragm to contribute to the breath cycle significantly more and actually pump within the canister and create the pressure changes on the inside, the internal pressures of the system. When we start to pump that thing up and down in these positions, what that actually starts to do is it starts to create compression and expansion within the axial skeleton. So when the diaphragm starts pumping, the rib cage starts expanding and we actually start getting deeper breaths in. And this is why it's all exhale focused, because the more air you get out, the more air you can then bring into the system. So as these breaths get deeper and as this diaphragm starts to pump more on the inside and control the pressure at the abdomen and within the rib cage, we actually start to get shape change, relative motion shape change at the rib cage relative to the spine, and then the spine and the sacrum relative to the pelvis. We actually start to increase movement at the axial skeleton. And if you think about all of the muscles that cross and control the hips and the shoulder blades, the shoulders, all of the muscles that come in and impact the trunk of the body, if we start moving that system, all of those muscles have then relatively changed their length and their tension. And then all of a sudden, coupled with this down regulation, this parasympathetic tone, all of a sudden we start to change range of motion very quickly. It is transient, but all of a sudden, by increasing relative motion of the axial skeleton and down regulating the nervous system, we can get immense changes in shoulder flexion, IRs and ERs at the shoulders and the hips, all over the place. And if you understand the principles that we're talking about, how the central nervous system functions, but then also this relative motion versus orientational motion, all of a sudden, the selection of these hyper-specific drills really I start to question them. Well, why do we need this left outside heel pressure, right medial foot pressure? I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to send rotation up the chain and create pressure and create sensory stuff at the feet. But most people don't need all of the extra cueing. They don't need the specific hip position. They don't need the specific chest and sternum position, head position, eye position, foot pressure, and all of those sort of things. Most people will get 95% of the benefits of breathing drill simply by those first two principles being understood, which is the central nervous system down regulation and regaining relative motion of the axial skeleton. If you can select a drill that just ticks that box, the 90-90 hip lift is one of my favorites. It's the easiest one to teach. People can see, they can look at themselves and they can see their rib cage moving. You can make subtle modifications to increase tension, reduce or increase tucking. You could change your arm position to improve the ability for the rib cage to move. 90-90 hip lift is a great one. Another great one is rock back breathing. Another great one is side lying breathing. They are three of the easiest drills for clients to get into. They're not confusing. Hey, I just want you to hunch down on your knees, arms in front, drop your head a little bit and just breathe into your back. Can you feel your back open? Now try get more air out. Exhale. Now try get more air in. Can you breathe into my hand? And you hold their hand above their rib cage. All of these, if you just execute those simple breathing drills well, and the client feels confident with them, they feel comfortable doing them, you will open up the range of motion that you can then go and load way easier than these hyper-specific fucking puzzle piece positions that a lot of people promote out there. So yeah, that would be the breathing drill stuff. I don't even know. I'm going to need feedback for for the podcast. If you're still listening and followed along, 1, could you follow along with that? 2, is this just better as a YouTube video? Am I kidding myself that I should just keep the podcast fun, lighthearted conversation, and then just actually make specific YouTube content? I probably should, let's be honest. Yeah, I need feedback. I want feedback. I'm open to some ideas. So yeah, but that was a big one. If you listen to that, hopefully you picked up some stuff. If you have questions, send me a DM. Yeah, if you do enjoy that type of conversation, I would recommend jumping into the movement mentorship. I have done a terrible job of promoting it over the last couple of months, but these are the conversations that happen in the movement mentorship. It's 6 weeks of weekly lecture calls plus a Q&A call, but then you also get the principal outline of my movement model. So all of the principles, relative versus orientational motion, some central nervous stuff is in there. Foot pressure is in there. There's a whole bunch of principle-based ideas and stuff in the pre-learning to get you up to speed to get the most out of week 1 content. But yeah, if you are interested in these conversations, and I know there are autistic coaches out there like myself that just love this shit, I would recommend doing the movement mentorship. The link is down below. The pre-learning kicks off on the 9th of Feb. It's going to be a very small group currently, so I'm going to spend a lot of time with the small group. But yeah, if you are keen, I would highly recommend jumping in there. It's $1,000, $9.99. And I think it is the best value that you will get on the internet for these sort of conversations and discussions. So if you are interested in these sort of things, jump in. I know I can teach a lot. I get a lot of questions. I know I can teach a lot of people a lot about these things. I also get a lot of the times questions about allied health. If you are in allied health, I know there are a lot of you out there, maybe not listening to this right now, but you will come back and listen to this episode. I have had a lot of allied health people through the mentorship, and the applied stuff as well. It's actually an area that I feel I have more impact with, because a lot of these ideas generally help people initially with training, and getting more buy-in quicker with clients, and getting people to overcome sort of pain and provocative positions and find quick wins with their training initially. And a lot of the time that lives heavily within the rehab world. So I know that these ideas and these concepts and these applications can help allied health people a lot. So if you are in allied health, I would highly recommend jumping in there as well. Nice. I think that is it for the yeah, now I'm doubting myself. I think it's too technical for the podcast, because my goal was to just have every week just a small topic like that. I actually need feedback. I need feedback. If you do listen to this, I think I only had 30 plays on YouTube, which hurt my soul. But if you do listen to this, give me some feedback on whether or not that was helpful, whether or not I completely lost you. A big focus of mine this year is going to be hammering the principles. So maybe I need to get some principle-based content out there. I don't know. Now my brain's ticking over, but hopefully that helps with the breathing stuff. Let's move on to the personal stuff. The first thing that I want to chat is I've been back in the gym, and I actually did some deep tier plyos. I made a joke on Instagram. Connor, if you listen to this, we were chatting in the applied mentorship about it. I had made a joke on Instagram that I was going to get into deep tier plyos, but I am officially at that age where I don't want to be the dad. I think maybe you just become that when you become a dad. I don't want to be the dad that can't do fun shit with my kids. We got a trampoline over Christmas, and Pia, my 2-year-old, has started jumping on there, which has been awesome. But just jumping on the trampoline, I didn't feel that confident with, because I just had not done any sort of training since April last year. I'm definitely overweight. I think I would be in the overweight category for the BMI right now. But I just was like, what am I doing? Like I just didn't have any freedom with my movements, and I was like, I think I actually need to start treating myself like a general sort of lifter, which is what I've been training at the gym for since I signed up last week. But my body is so fucking sore. Holy shit. I'm adopting the low volume, high intensity strategy for my training. I want my sessions to be no more than 45 minutes, either upper or lower. Just a good compound lift to start with. So yesterday was my lower day. Yesterday was my lower day, which was my, what day today? Wednesday. Yeah, yesterday was lower. Monday was upper. I did squats to start with. I just did 3 sets of 6 at a pretty decent RPE, which is only 105 kilos right now, but that will move pretty quickly. And then 3 sets of 6 at like an RPE 8, probably an 8.5, like to the point where my legs felt like they were sticky coming up on the concentric. And then I just hammer machines, and I do 2 sets. The first set is like a warm up to like a good RPE 8. And then the second set is like a full burnout drop set, lengthened partial if needed, like just hammer it. Sometimes I take a break, take 3 or 4 deep breaths in, calm the nervous system, reduce the pin, drop set, bang again, and just go for it. And the amount of fatigue that this fucking strategy, this low volume, high intensity is bringing, and variety of movements as well, because I'm doing like 2 or 3 different movements in quick succession. This might sound like fucking shit to a lot of you coaches out there. I have done nothing since April. And my training for the last 3 or 4 years has been so sporadic, but I can't tell you, I did absolutely nothing from April. I am basically a new lifter. I'm to the point where just lifting my arms up and like shrugging my shoulder blades, like my elbows like to about 90 degrees, hurts my pecs. I feel a pec stretch. Just literally starting to lift and shrug my shoulders up is my pecs are like, they're like shredded off the bone. I feel like a brand new lifter, but yeah, I'm undertaking the low volume, high intensity sort of strategy. And I think I'm just going to run with that for a while. I'm actually enjoying it a lot, which has been good. I'm also just enjoying being at a gym where I don't have to fucking worry about cleaning something or fixing something or having a chat with a member about something that I should have done earlier that week and blah, 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 whatever it is. Like I'm just going in there as a what would it be called? Like a muggle. I'm going in there as a muggle, which is nice. But I started doing some deep tier plyos just between my squat sets. I've done a couple of sessions of some deep tiers. I'm just sort of bouncing in and out of that bottom position, and I can feel my knees moving in a new position, and like just loading in different strategies. I'm doing it in Crocs as well. I've started wearing Crocs, which has been awesome. I also think it fixed my plantar fascia wearing Crocs. It's that wide toe box, but the deep tier pliers is definitely something I'm going to explore. And I actually want to have Angus Bradley on the podcast. I haven't spoken to him about this, but I want him to sort of, hey man, where do I start with this, and coach me through it on the podcast, and give me a little sort of rundown for that. I think Angus is going to be my first guest, just because he is the OG of my education stuff. So deep tier pliers are in, which is awesome. And I'm actually loving training. I went for a run. My goal was 20 minutes. I got to 17. My legs were fucked after that. My next run, I think, will probably be Friday, and I'll be looking to get past the 20-minute threshold. So probably looking for 2021, I reckon. But I'm going to be running two times, at least once a week. But I'm going to aim for 2 times a week. Just hopefully building up to about 40 minutes over the next probably month and a half, and then just sort of ticking it over from there. But that's my training. That's my training update. I feel very refreshed from it, though. I do need to lose some weight, though. I am overweight, without a doubt. It is a soupy mess, my rig. The final thing that I wanted to chat about is sort of my plan for training model. Last week, we chatted about sort of the direction of what I want to move in and run the courses, and I've got that opportunity up in Sydney, which is awesome. But kind of circles back to some of the initial chats about profit and all of those sort of things. I like stability in business. Like I like just having a recurring base of revenue. A lot of the people in this world that I'm stepping into, which is just full-time e-commerce, online stuff, that sell courses and sell programs and things like that. A lot of the time, those types of businesses can have big, like when you drop a course and run it and market it, it's a big intake of money, but then maybe a couple of months go past where it's a big drop in money, and it kind of just balances out in that way. Like coming from the gym environment where it was just so heavily recurring revenue, like it was really just up or down a couple of % every week. And that's how I've always run businesses. I want a little bit of that within my online business. And the way that I think that best fits that is actually continuing to maintain a steady flow of coaching clients, which I've got, which is nearing capacity. I think I'm going to attack it in 2 ways. I'm going to attack more consulting-based stuff, probably a little bit different to just like ongoing training. But that is actually nearing capacity for my first sort of, I want to, like when I say threshold, it's kind of my first sort of checkpoint to see how my time management is going, which will only be, I think, 12 online clients. As of this week, I've gained 4 this week, which is crazy, but I'm already up to 8. So if you do want online coaching from me, to learn these things through your own training, There will be two options. There will be an ongoing rate, just that has a 12-week minimum, your typical online coaching. But then there'll also be like a consulting rate where maybe we build a program together. I can recommend some stuff. You can send some videos. And I think that will be best in 6-week blocks. That is how my online coaching is going to run. I do need to build a website page for that as well. That's one of my little goals, probably by the end of Jan, to just have that up, even if it's just pretty basic, just so people are aware of the two ways in which I operate with online coaching. And then the second part to that, just sort of like recurring base of people that I'm helping that aren't these huge courses, that aren't these mentorships and these seminars and things that I want to get into, is going to be one-on-one mentoring, which, again, my first checkpoint for one-on-one mentoring will be 8 clients or 8 coaches at any one point. I'm waiting on feedback from 2 people to see if they're jumping in or continuing more so from last year. They'll have that from the end of the week. But it looks like I've probably only got a couple of spots left for one-on-one mentoring as well. I do have a landing page, which I'll have down below for one-on-one mentoring. And with my one-on-one mentoring, like the base level that most people start with, it's a 6-week block with 6 calls, 6 1-hour calls. And you also get access to the applied mentorship content portal, so you can undertake all of that and go through that. That mentoring block kind of sets the scene that if we want to then go from there, we can sort of move to fortnightly calls or monthly calls or whatever it needs to be. A lot of the time, the mentoring stuff for the people that I've helped in the last couple of months has been a bit of a mix of sort of like business and coaching. So some business sort of recommendations and just some directional changes with that. But then also a little bit of just like coaching, understanding some concepts a little bit deeper in a one-on-one setting has been really valuable. And then what most people have done after that 6 weeks is kind of just deviate into it. All right, let's just continue on the business one, which generally is not a weekly call. Or we do some more coaching, some case studies, and really get into the weeds with the sort of principles of movement and programming that I teach. So that would be the other thing that's going to be recurring and ongoing. Those 2 services. But they will be capped, and they'll be capped at 20 people total. So roughly 12 people in the online coaching and 8 people with the mentoring. So if you are interested in either of those and working with me, I have no intentions of these things becoming like, oh, it's a 12-month thing or any of that sort of shit. Like it for me, I just want to have a big impact quickly. And then if that looks like we work together for 3 months, for 6 months, maybe that's great with me. But yeah, now I'm sort of just in the weeds of my services, but I just want to get this stuff out there. And even if it is only 30 people listening to this initially, I think it will help because you guys are obviously keen to hear from me. So that's it. I think that will wrap up my first, I actually didn't check if I had questions come through my question box. I'm not going to do this right now. Fuck. If there were questions from when I put the thing up on Monday, I will answer them next week. But all I need from you right now, if you're still listening to this fucking rambling mess, firstly, thank you very much for supporting me on my new journey. Secondary, some feedback on the technical chat at the start. Was it too deep? Yeah, just some feedback. I'm treating this podcast as a blank slate. Third to that is going to be, if you did enjoy this or got something out of it, just send me a DM. I'm keen to chat, or even better, share it to a friend. That will help me as well. But thank you. This has tailed off. If you're still here, I love you. Bye.